Hey, Cade.
Upway, ooyay, ooday, ontway.
Oh my goodness. How did you get your students to stop just answering your questions in Voxer?
I, ont day, no,
Okay. Just come here. Welcome to Across the Hall, a podcast sharing ELA strategies from one door away, with your host, Cade Summers and Michelle Shelton. This is Episode 6, Crafting Communication. Hey y'all, I'm Michelle Shelton.
And I'm Cade Summers.
In today's episode, we'll be talking about communication in the classroom.
I like communicating. I'm an excellent communicator.
And an excellent liar, because Cade is not an excellent communicator. As a matter of fact, every day at lunch, I try to talk to him, and he smiles, and he nods. See what I'm saying? And then I ask a question, and he'll say, huh?
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 Like that?
Yeah, he doesn't listen to anything I say.
That's what she thinks. She's just not interesting. No, I'm just kidding. So today's episode is all about communication. And we all, as professionals, those of you who are listening who work in education, we all want to become better communicators. And what better way to pass it along to our students than through an intentional plan for increasing engagement and communication in the classroom. So that's really what we're geared toward in this particular episode.
Yes, so this summer, Cade came up with this awesome plan called Mission Engaged Discussion. And I interrupted him just then because he would never want to take credit for that. But this is 100% his idea, to the point that I basically just went through and changed all the Mr. Summers to Miss Shelton's in his handout and gave it to my students.
It's okay. We can share. That's what we do when we're across the hall. We share things.
I think on Twitter lately, I've actually seen a hashtag #StillEDU. Is that what that is about? Like stealing ideas from educators?
Maybe so. I'm not really sure.
I finally got a hashtag because it's been happening for quite a while.
Is that still STILL or
STEAL?
So we are geared toward this mission engaged discussion, and the sort of premise behind this was I was reflecting on the last few years, the first few years of my teaching career, and thinking about one of the best ways to get students more involved and engaged in the classroom. I mean, they're in every school district. The conversation is always about student engagement. Well, I just can't get my students motivated. If only I could get them motivated, then maybe they'd do better on that ACT Aspire or the ACT or the some other standardized test. We're very good at making excuses, but we're not very good at creating remedies to fix the problems. And so, just like in our everyday lives, we learn best by being engaged in conversations. And I don't just mean me talking, but I also mean by listening to other people talk. And especially the way that I listen to, or should I say not the way that I listen to Michelle and others at the lunch table. I really do learn from all of my colleagues. It's just that sometimes it's something I'm working on. So can I just admit my failures? I'm confessing to you now that I'm working on it. All right, Michelle?
As long as you're working on it.
So stop giving me that look. Stop.
Yeah. So another thing whenever it comes to classroom discussion is something that's near and dear to my heart is would be my introverted students. Because I, too, have a tendency to be introverted. I believe I took a quiz that was 99% introverted. So I understand the struggle of being in a classroom and having things to say, but not knowing when you can insert yourself into a conversation or not feeling comfortable doing that.
Yeah, inverted students really need some support.
Or introverted even.
What did I just say?
You said inverted.
Inverted. Yeah. So I'm picturing contortionists. And
hanging from the ceiling.
They're very good in gymnastics, but they're just not very good in English. In all seriousness, introverted students definitely need that kind of support that gives them options. And this particular plan that has been created is built around the idea of options, student choice.
Okay, yes, there are 6 components to this discussion program that Kate has created, and they are multimodality, quantity, comprehensibility, receptivity, empathy, and variety. So the student choice comes into play in the multimodality, which is the first component. And one of the more important components, because this is where the student choice comes in, and it allows those students who are constantly raising their hand to participate in class. It also gives those introverted students plenty of different options for participation. But anyway, those 5 modes that we have been using are Flipgrid, Voxer, the Buzz, which is in Blackboard, our LMS, in-class discussion, and Twitter.
Yeah, definitely. And the nice thing about all of those is that they're similar but different enough to be able to inspire certain kids to use one over the other. For example, with Twitter, you have a little bit more of a youthful facade for it. Students tend to like Twitter more than they do Facebook. Of course, I wouldn't use Facebook for something with school anyway, but you have the hashtag availability, and of course with my class we have S'more English 57 as a hashtag. S'more is just a play on words with my last name, Summers, and students are able to post pictures, videos, take graphic images or pictures of annotations that they have taken or completed. Also gives them the opportunity to take pictures that may connect theme to something else in the world around them, their house, some object there, or some object in the community around them. As well as with Voxer, it's slightly different in that it's a little bit more private. It's our classroom group, and inside that, it's a little bit more community-like. Whereas with Twitter, you have the public able to view many of those posts that are uploaded or published to the hashtag. Voxer is published within our classroom community, and you really do feel that way. Students are beginning to bounce ideas off of each other. They can sometimes get a little bit witty and crack a little bit of humor or jokes in there, although I tell them to keep it academic, and they do a good job of that. You can put text in there or pictures or even video in Voxer, which is kind of nice. So I've had a lot of success with Voxer, and I know, Michelle, you've also been using Voxer too, right?
Yeah, and if you heard that little noise I made a minute ago, that's an example of that whole introvert not knowing how to interrupt somebody thing. But yes, first of all, I want to backtrack to Twitter for just a second, because I've been very surprised at how few of my students use Twitter. I really thought more of them would be active on Twitter. So that's something that I'm actually having to encourage them to do, which was not something I was expecting.
Yeah, I've had to kind of poke and prod with that one. It's not been the most used method. But again, it does make me reflect on the fact that we're trying to find ways that students can connect and find something they relate to. So Twitter is not the most popular. Voxer actually is the most popular because, according to my students, it's the most like texting, and they feel very comfortable with that.
And they really like how easily accessible I am, I think, on Voxer, because I can help them I can prod along their conversations. Voxer is on my phone, so it goes off with notifications, and I'm able to hop on and kind of help them out. But they have really been enjoying Voxer, and they didn't know it existed, which I found a little bit strange, but they had no idea. Now they're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I also love the fact that Voxer records voice. So I tell my students, of course, with 15, 16-year-olds, stay away from any social media or use of the phone while driving or in a vehicle. Stay away from that. But I personally find it convenient that at times, if I'm riding in a car, I might be able to hold a button down without even looking at my phone and know that I can record a message that can be shared within the group. But also not just that. I don't do that very often. Even in my classroom, at the end of a school day, when all the students are gone, I can leave a message there for students to hear. If I'm trying to keep my mind focused on some paperwork in front of me, I can easily just record a voice. So I love Voxer, and my students have said so too. in the last few weeks, we've had the beginning of this program, our Mission Engaged Discussion program, and for the last 3 weeks, respectively, we've had 122, then 134, and now 142 digital discussion posts that are somewhat split, mostly between Voxer and the Blackboard discussion board.
Yeah, I was going to say probably the second most popular, and I'm just going to be completely transparent. I've only done this for 1 week with my pre-AP students, so obviously they're going to start with what seems most comfortable to them. So Voxer has that text message feel to it that they're used to, so Voxer was something that they really latched onto. And the other thing is the Blackboard discussion board, because that's something that they've used in class before as well. So those are the two things they were the most familiar with. I did have some that, we've used Flipgrid in class, of course. I think the video component of that may have kept some of them from using Flipgrid for this particular purpose. They love Flipgrid for other things, but for this particular purpose, they're not choosing Flipgrid as much. But this past week, since it was a short week, we had some other things going on. I reduced the number of modes they had to use. They only had to use 2. So they pretty much used Voxer and the Buzz. So this next week, when they have to use 3, they're going to branch out a little bit.
Yeah. Well, Flipgrid, I actually had a student just today say that she prefers posting in Flipgrid. And for whatever reason, she really likes the types of, what do you call it? The graphics that you can draw on top of the picture at the end of the Flipgrid.
The drawings and the stickers.
Yeah, the drawings and the stickers. She loves that. But she's a very intuitive, very thoughtful student who likes to provoke thoughts and considerations that other students might not have been provoking. And so she has preferred Flipgrid because she likes to spark things. And Flipgrid just recently has changed its program, its app, or its website in order to encourage students to have a stronger voice where they don't just respond to a teacher's prompt, but instead they feel inspired to create their own. And so this particular student prefers getting to provoke other people's minds to thoughts by posting what we're calling sparks.
Absolutely. I'm really going to be encouraging my students to get in Flipgrid more often. I know the video, they're 9th graders. They don't necessarily like putting their face out there, but they do enjoy the stickers and being able to cover their face in those selfies that they take. But I'm going to be really encouraging Flipgrid and try to maybe even get some competition going as far as who's going to get sparked, because that is an awesome addition to Flipgrid.
It is. Well, we also have the 5th component, and you were saying how you've only required 2 on a short week or on the first week of your class using the program. And there's another element that is really convenient, and it's in-class discussion. At the collegiate level, which I'm trying to gear my students toward, or even the career level of life, you are going to be held responsible to send emails, to sometimes create a video, to sometimes send text messages, to talk to employers as well as the employees you might manage or that you might work alongside in a face-to-face way. And so the reason for all of these different modes contributes to student voice and trying to get the most out of a student's respective talents, but also it does try to, as the rubric says, make discussion and conversation multimodal. I am not a one-dimensional, I only talk to you to the face, but I can't text you or I cannot email you. We are the kind of people that need to be modeling different ways of communicating and how that in different situations, one way is sometimes better than another way, or it is better. So in-class discussions are fun around here because just recently there were several teachers in our high school who got microphones for their classroom. And my students, not only do I have one that hangs around my neck, but also my students have a handheld one. And we have made it a requirement when they participate in in-class discussion to use the student mic. It's a handheld mic. And I especially give them opportunity to speak during a reflection time at the end of our period that is called the Final 5. And I'll put 3 or 4 or 5 different prompts up on the board or topics. And throughout the period, the students can glance up there and be preparing their minds to think about those topics so that they can record in the log that we provide along with this self-evaluation rubric the conversation or the contribution that they give to even in-class discussion. And that is always a fun time. And my students, if I get so bell-to-bell focused that I forget to do my final 5, I now have students with their logs out ready to record and to contribute in class saying, hey, Mr. Summers, we're doing the final 5. Now we only have 4 minutes left.
I love that final 5 idea. That's something I'm definitely also going to hashtag still EDU for UU because that's something I need to push myself to do is just to really kind of remind myself to give the students at least that 5 minutes of class discussion no matter what we've been doing in class. That reminds them, reminds me to give them that opportunity to discuss in class. Looking at the rubric, multimodality is the first thing. Quantity is the next. And I think it's important that students contribute throughout the week. I know that this first week, at least, they tended to try to wait until Thursday when it was due on Friday, which doesn't exactly spread that out. So that's something that we're going to be working on. Have you found that that's been a problem?
I'm going to be monitoring that. I know in my college experience that there were college professors whose rubrics would say that you had to contribute on at least 3 different days. And that was their way around ensuring students do not wait till the very last moment to contribute to class discussion. I've experienced the problem, but it has not disabled students' abilities to contribute. So at this point in time, I'm not really concerned about that unless students are just waiting so late that they don't end up having 8 contributions to class discussion in a week. So quantity is significant. As we're going to mention here in just a second, it connects to variety. And if all you are doing on that last day, because everybody is just having to post some content, if everybody is just making a unique observation, they're not showing much variety in the types of responses that they have in class discussion. So it's better if you start them early in the week because then students can create their own questions, especially level 3 questions that make students think in terms of real world application. It's also a good opportunity to be able to get them to share more of the process of learning over the process of a week when we really are trying to develop a certain skill or help them understand a certain component of the text that takes a stretch of 4 or 5 days. So if you wait to the last minute, you don't get to see much of the process of learning that's taken place over the course of a week. And instead, you just get like a close-up snapshot of that particular day. So it's always nice to see that process.
And Kate and I are fully aware that this is a lot of information over a podcast. These notes will be, and the rubric will be in the show notes for you to look at so that you can get a visual of what we're trying to say. He's talking about variety right now, and there are 10 different ways that students can contribute to class discussion. And the requirement for variety is that they mix it up and don't always communicate in the exact same way. So just looking over the list, I'm going to call out a few. We got ask purposeful questions, respond to other people's questions, make a unique observation, make connections to class content or other parts of a text, build on another's observation. And I will just pause right there because what I noticed in my first week that we're going to have to definitely work on is that my 9th graders tended to all just want to answer my prompt and not necessarily have a discussion with their classmates. So I've already addressed this in class and told them, listen, guys, this is supposed to be a conversation. And if you're having a conversation with somebody, you don't keep going back to the very first thing that was said. You have to build on what was just said. So that is something that definitely is going to be a learning curve for them because right now they're really dependent upon the question that I have asked.
Yeah, I think as I'm listening to you describe these and I'm looking at the list on the guide or the rubric in front of me, I just can't help but think that these are things that any teacher could put up on a wall or could continually remind his or her students of to increase class engagement, to make students realize what is a valuable or powerful conversation in my classroom that proves my academic development, proves that I am thinking, proves that I am analyzing. And all of these things, the 5 that she mentioned, I'll mention the other 5. Apply text, topics, or themes to the world around you. Graphically share observations or connections through the use of non-textual media. Graphically or textually share significant quotes in the text.
Oh, how I love a good quote.
Yes, and they're meaningful, and you get to learn about a student's interests when they attach to something that another student might not. The 9th one is graphically display annotations of a text, and the 10th is share or celebrate learning milestones. So it's nice just to feel rewarded and celebrate something I have accomplished while I have gone through the learning stretch of really battling or tackling, struggling with a difficult text, a difficult concept, or a difficult skill. So all of these, if you were to create a small poster or create a large poster for each of them and display them around the room, just for students to be exposed to the ideas of how they can contribute to not just class discussion, but to academic thinking and personal development. These are all really useful for that purpose, in addition to our rubric.
I really think that, and I'm just going to keep talking because I do that whole, I can't interrupt people.
You're good.
Thing. It's fine. I think that number 9 and 10 are actually my 2 favorites. I like the graphically display annotations of a text because annotation is something that we're working on in class anyway, and then they've got, they can do book snaps, and it really shows that they're connecting with what it is that we're reading. And then that share or celebrate learning milestones. I mean, what an awesome experience it is to hear a student finally say, I got it. I think that teachers across the world love that moment, that light bulb moment, and to see them celebrating that in this way with their peers makes that even better.
Which, by the way, Michelle, if you incorporate Voxer or one of these other methods, but especially Voxer, into your classroom and your students really begin participating in that, another idea along with sharing those learning milestones is you as a teacher. If you've just recently graded some really quality work, like I did just recently, especially when it contrasts some not so quality work of many of the students' peers, then you can really showcase that. Take a picture of it in Voxer and then say, as I did the other day, Jasmine really hit a home run with this annotation of sinners in the hands of an angry God. Take a look at how much writing she did in the margins of this paper. Look at the things that she's highlighted and underlined here and made comments about. And tell everybody in the class something that you notice about hers that she did well that you yourself need to work on. And I started having, I think, about 10 different students commenting about this student's work that I have already graded or I've already provided feedback on and just displayed graphically in the form of a picture that I placed inside of Voxer. And so using that as a model really is intended to stimulate other students to start thinking, wow, he's noticing the quality of her work and he wants me to comment on the quality or lack thereof of my work. And the intention there is to try to drive them to to work harder, to be more motivated, and to meet the standards that I'm expecting as implied through my commentary on her work.
And that's powerful for Jasmine to be celebrated and for the other students to, like you said, to be motivated and throw a little competition at them. See if maybe I can throw your work out here next time.
That's right. So the next line on the rubric, this would make this the third line, is comprehensibility. So we had multimodality, quantity, and comprehensibility. And with this one, all we're looking for is just, students, does what you are writing or saying make sense? And by make sense, I don't mean just, does it grammatically form a simple sentence or a complete sentence? By this, I mean, are they citing relevant text? Are they relating text, topics, and themes to outside knowledge? Are you using clear and complete reasoning? Are you asking questions to try to further and enhance dialogue, or are you kind of stagnating the conversation that just seems to not move at all because you almost closed it up? We want students encouraging dialogue and keeping that going through comprehensible or clearly understandable content that makes other students want to dive in more, not to run away from.
Guys, there have been 2 things that have just made me throw my hands up, just walk out of the hall and say, I just don't understand how I'm supposed to help them have thoughts. And then there are other days when I throw up my hands and say, I don't understand how I'm supposed to help them make sense. And those are two things that just I've noticed over the past few years in my career that have been lacking. And I don't know if it's because of technology, because of texting, or what, but I've had a hard time getting them to expand on their own thoughts, and sometimes even just to tell me something other than I don't know whenever I ask them something. And this has been so wonderful for getting my students who don't normally in class say things that you would consider maybe very deep, but on Voxer, whenever they know they're being graded and other people are seeing what they see in writing, they are giving me much better thoughts, much better answers, elaborating on what they're saying, and that's been really nice.
Yeah, it really is. And you get rid of the comprehensibility part of this rubric, and students then will be, like you probably have experienced if you have discussion boards on a one-to-one device at your school. Great job, Sam. Or that's awesome, Antoine, or whatever, where it just totally lacks substance. This comprehensibility measure, as they look at it in evaluating it themselves, is intended to drive them to enhanced and greater thinking, not just to settle with a 2 or 3 word response that has zero substance. So the next part of the rubric is receptivity to receive. And this one is just really all about recognizing other people. As Michelle and I were joking about my inability to listen very well, if I were involved in class discussion and I were evaluating myself, this is where I would have to give myself a low score on those days when I don't listen to Michelle's comments very well. Because
why does the rubric not allow for a 0? Okay, 1 seems to be as low as I could give you there.
It is. Thank you for that. And you're right. It would score me as does not recognize others' comments, only discusses unidirectionally without any attempt to involve others. Ouch. That really hurts. But it's a fact that some people only comment, and so they have to be aware of this. They'll only comment to get their 8 for the week.
Right.
But they don't recognize anybody else in the class. They're just there to get theirs.
That is exactly the problem I had this past week.
And if that's the case, then their receptivity points, you need to remind them of the fact that, look, on the rubric, if you are not at all acknowledging anybody else's comments, then you are at a low score on receptivity points. You need to be up there with the folks at the top who are patient with different opinions, or even inviting other people's opinions and asking for clarification, bringing other people into dialogue, saying, finding someone out there saying, so what do you think, Destiny? Or Colby, what are your opinions about ... And Colby is all of a sudden seeing himself attached in this conversation while he's eating supper with his little brother, and he's like, whoa, how'd I get brought into this? But what you're doing is encouraging receptivity, and you're also building that community.
I tried to model that this past week because I was having such a hard time with them doing that by doing exactly what you just said, only I was the one doing it. Like, so what you think, Dev? Or what do you think about what Nathan said, Lisa? And so I was trying to pull them in. Some of them never even acknowledged I asked them the question. So this is definitely a work in progress for my class.
Yeah, and that's another nice thing about Voxer is it does say read by whoever, if they've actually looked at it or listened to or played by if it's an audio clip.
And the last part of the rubric, it's not listed last, but it's the last one we haven't discussed yet, is empathy, which has been a huge focus of several different things that we are doing in class here, design thinking and whatnot. But I think empathy is so important in discussion, and I can see how empathy and receptivity are very much connected. So how is empathy looking in your discussions?
Well, empathy especially is seen when there is a party in the classroom or outside the classroom who could have a different perspective, and that perspective could be easily offended. So there are some sensitive issues where this empathy subject seems to take greater precedence than other sorts of situations. But in the text that we're reading right now, Warriors Don't Cry by Melba Pattillo Beals, it is all about race relations in America's history, especially in the 1950s when the Little Rock City School District in Little Rock, Arkansas was being integrated. So what better topic to illustrate empathy than race relations in America, especially given just in the last weekend the fact that we have the topic of football players in the NFL kneeling because they do not feel like black people in America are being respected to the level that they ought to be respected by not just everyday folks, but by folks who are in authoritative positions, especially after the president's recent remarks. So without delving into that and even giving you any kind of indication as to Michelle's or my particular perception or opinions on all of that, our own beliefs, fact of the matter is, in a classroom situation, there are going to be a variety of opinions, even on that particular issue. So this empathy part of the discussion rubric is so valuable to teach to young people who are so quick to have an opinion without considering other people's perspectives or the reasoning for their perspectives, that it encourages them to bite their tongues, or in some cases, if they're texting or typing in Voxer, it's kind of stopping their thumbs. And they need to pause, consider how they're saying what they're trying to say, even though it might be a different perspective than someone else's, and especially if that's the case, and then consider how can they reword what they have said in order to be less caustic and to show more willingness to perceive and understand the other side. That's the difference between debate and dialogue. It's the idea that we all have opinions, and our opinions are going to differ, and our opinions may be based on some of the same evidence, but we have to reason it out in a way that's empathetic. That is, seeing implicitly and explicitly the idea that we are trying to show awareness of other people's emotions, circumstances, opinions, and perspectives that are not mine. So that's really the empathy part of the rubric. And my job as a teacher is not to tell people what to believe, but my job as a teacher is to get people to reason about the variety of ways people believe in our society, and that we have to live alongside all of those differing beliefs, whether or not we compromise our own or that we shift from one to another.
And I think one of my favorite parts of this program that you've created is the self-assessment component, where the students actually are the ones who assess their discussion through the week, and we just get to sit back and enjoy.
Yeah, and it's not really, it is enjoyable, and what she's saying is exactly right. I used to regret times when I come up with an idea where it seems like breakthrough. I'm going to really accomplish something with these students. They're really going to love this classroom activity or this strategy or whatever, this tool. And in the end, I get so burned out because I have to do all of the grading.
You've pretty much created some kind of torture for yourself is what you've done. So
we have a problem, especially in America, where teachers work a lot harder than the students. And in this particular format, the idea is that students begin to work for themselves, that the teacher becomes, it sounds so cliche, but becomes a facilitator. Like Michelle was saying, she and I get to go into our Voxer classes and contribute to discussion and give feedback on people's opinions and even contribute to the class discussion as if we're a student sometimes. And that provokes greater thought. That provokes greater interaction and enhances the community. Whereas if we were so concerned about the grading part, then we're not able to contribute to all of that. It's a pain in our sides. And it all kind of falls apart because the students do need us modeling and prompting and provoking others to have their own thoughts and their own questions and so on. So the students really have grabbed hold of this. Now, it is important, once they have evaluated themselves, that you do collect it and not just enter the grade, but that you do review how they're completing the log. Are they putting the work into it? Are they being detailed? there's not a whole lot to the log besides the fact that you indicate which of the 10 different ways that you can contribute in class. Remember, variety. We want more than 3 different ways, and there are 10 different ways that you can. But that we want them to also give a 5-word gist. My students kind of like this because it's challenging to take an entire discussion or an entire thought that they had articulated in one of these formats and put it into 5 words. So that's a challenge for them. So they log it, and then when we get to grade it or look at their log and their self-evaluation, if I notice that Sam has a 17 out of 17 for quantity, having contributed 8 or more times during the week, but Sam only has 1 item logged, sorry, Sam, you're not getting a 17 out of 17. I'm bumping you all the way down to 1 out of 17. So it's important that you hold the students accountable to their own honest measurement of their self-assessment. So, Michelle, this is something that we believe is useful for English teachers, but I suppose it could be used in other types of formats too, right?
Pretty much any class, I would think.
So math concepts, science concepts, and
history for sure.
And in our school system, we are really working at literacy in all content areas. And I know that you other content areas, if you happen to be listening, or English teachers, talk to your content area friends about the idea of impacting literacy and communication through this program or a program that's modified to be very similar to this, because you get them talking, you get them digging at home in research or digging through a book, digging through an article or doing some extra analysis. That is something that they could have, when they could have been, playing a video game, or when they could have been, goofing around texting a friend on a phone that they really didn't need to be texting. So using time that is on their hands to engage productively in the academic process and learning, and making it fun, because this is us meeting them where they are, not them expecting to come all the way where we are as adult teachers who live in a life, if we were all by ourselves, of utter boredom from their perspective.
I've been really excited about it, and every time I see my phone go off and I look down and I see where a student's discussing, I light up, and I'm like, they're discussing. I'm just so excited. Even if I'm at a football game or something, I'm just so excited that they're discussing and that they're contributing.
So this brings this episode, I suppose, to the point where we have #the struggle. So, Michelle, what is your #the struggle?
Well, related to what we've been talking about, I actually did have a bit of a struggle. The other day, I just mentioned a football game. So I was on my way to a football game, and I got stuck in some traffic. And so I pick up my phone, and I hit the button, and I think that I'm talking to a couple of my friends, and I am just ranting about this traffic and about this town, and I'm upset, and I can't find an ATM. Fortunately, I didn't say anything inappropriate, because I looked down at my phone and realized I had just sent that rant to my class.
Uh-oh.
Yes, I actually saw your name, because I have a couple of teachers in that class as well. Sorry about that, Cade, but I looked down and it said delivered to Cade Summers, and I was like, wait a second, he's not in that other group. And then I noticed, so then I sent another message. Guys, I'm so sorry. I'm obviously in traffic and so thrilled I didn't say anything horribly inappropriate. So my struggle was that I have a lot of different chats on Voxer. So my advice to you is be careful if you use Voxer a lot, that you are in the right group if you ever, feel the need to rant to some friends or colleagues.
It's okay. At least you guys have been, doing the Voxer thing for several weeks now. Wait a second.
It was 1 week.
That was your first week.
It was my first week. Oops.
Well, I don't really have a #the struggle. I mean, you don't want to hear about my #the struggles. I just got way too many.
We'll be here till next Saturday.
Quite honestly. Most recently, one of those was getting my students to create their own questions. because one of the greatest responsibilities if you have a program like this is to model how prompts work. And in order to get that done, I've had to put 3 or 4 prompts in all of those different modes for the first few weeks. And so I've had 3 or 4 prompts in the buzz each week, 3 or 4 prompts in Voxer.
That's pretty challenging. I've been trying to go through all the different modes and make sure that there's something there to kind of kick off discussion has been a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and so I wanted it to be fresh and exciting. So there is my hashtag the struggle. Part of that also was getting students to understand how they can actually create their own questions. That would be pretty cool for students to listen to and to respond to, because we all know that old grumpy teachers are not the most fun people to respond to, but thoughts that are
you calling me old or grumpy?
What was the word I was about to say? Stimulated. So thoughts stimulated by peers are the ones that they tend to respond to the most. I'll put something in there on Sunday and it won't ever be responded to. But one of my students now, and I say one, I've got about 12, 13 students who are starting to ask questions, which is awesome. And I'll notice that they'll start posting something, and then all of a sudden it's like rapid fire response time, where students just woke up and they think it's pretty cool to respond to each other. And they keep the academic content driven. So I love that fact, and it's also going to be a relief to me over time when they start creating a lot of their own prompts to drive their discussion.
So we will definitely put this rubric, put all of these explanations in the show notes, along with some screenshots of some of the conversations that our students have been having, so that you can see what kind of conversation has been generated from our students. Having a great time with this class discussion. It's something that I've never tried before. I'm enjoying it. The students seem to be really grabbing a hold of it, and I think that it's definitely something beneficial that you can work into your class.
So I guess that wraps it up for this week. I guess we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to episode 7. Don't forget to stop by acrossthehallpodcast.com for the show notes and join the Across the Hall conversation at #XTheHall. We hope you'll join us next time when we talk to Angela Stockman, author of Make Writing. See you next time.